Alright, what's going on, guys? Trev back again, here to bring you another video. This one's going to be doing a video giving my thoughts now that we're heading into the 8th and final season for Game of Thrones, with the ending said to be bittersweet by George R.R. Martin. Do we think that possibly Jon could be killed off in the end? And spoiler warning, if you guys have not seen up to the Season 7 finale yet for Game of Thrones. So definitely want to do this one. We'll do it as a Q&A as we're getting started, getting closer, getting ready to do the death predictions video, which I'll have for you guys probably next week for Game of Thrones. We'll go through each character and we'll predict who we think is going to survive and who we think is going to be killed off in the 8th and final season. So in this one, this came in from John Alexander, who said, I keep coming back to George R.R. Martin saying that the ending for Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire is bittersweet. And then he thinks, so John Alexander says that he thinks Jon or Daenerys, must die, or one of the two of them will probably be killed off. The way it's setting up, I keep thinking it's Daenerys that will be killed off. She wants the throne so much. Jon really doesn't care for it, doesn't really want it. So it kind of seems more in the theme of the show if he's the one who gets it, because he doesn't really want it, is what his idea is here. It also pays off his heritage, and plays off his heritage. Everyone died, and then he says he thinks everyone's going to be killed off except for Sansa, Jon, Sam, Jaime, Tormund, Tryion, maybe, plus a few second-tier characters. This leaves a major player alive from each houses to kind of come together and rebuild afterwards, which would be a good way to see a finale. Like all the battles are won, you have one major character from each of the major houses, and they kind of all join together in peace to rebuild and kind of prosper. So that'd be a good thing to see, but you are right that George R.R. Martin did say that the ending of Game of Thrones would be bittersweet, which of course means that you're going to have some things that are nice to see, a happy ending in some ways, in other ways not so much. So he thinks that one out of the two, Jon or Daenerys, has to be killed off. I personally, would love to see a happy ending for Game of Thrones, more on the happy rather than the bitter, and get to see Jon and Daenerys kind of together, rule together, and maybe have some children, that kind of thing. I think that would be a great happy ending for the series, because the series really does put its viewers through a lot. You get to see, the deaths of very important characters that are forefront characters, characters like Ramsay that torture and do things like that. So I personally would really like to see kind of a happier ending for Game of Thrones. If they were to kill off one of the two, John Alexander here thinks that it would be Daenerys that would be killed off and Jon would stay based on that. It depends kind of what you think, I think, about the family and that kind of deal. If you're going to go with Jon and Daenerys getting married, having kids, if you're going to go that route, I think you might want to go with Daenerys being the one to survive, have the mother survive on to raise the kids and that kind of thing afterwards, rather than the father. The other thing is that Jon's been killed off already once, and then he's kind of brought back magically in the show, right? Which fit in perfectly because it was all set up well and everything like that. So for me, if I had to choose one of the two, Jon is my favorite. I like Jon more than Daenerys, I should say this. But I do think that it would make more sense for kind of that happy ending to have, the mother be there with her children rather than him. Because he's already he's a warrior, and in peacetime, if they were to have him be killed off in the end, it'd be like, his story is the Game of Thrones story. Once he's done, and then she has kids afterwards, takes care of kids. But one thing we should factor in here is that Emilia Clarke, who plays, of course, Daenerys, did say that she is not going to reprise her role as Daenerys after this series is done. Once Game of Thrones is over, once Season 8 is finished, she's done. She's not reprising her role ever again for Daenerys. Now, that could not matter, because with regards to the spin-off series, it's probably not going to be a sequel from what we're hearing. It sounds like it's going to be some kind of prequel series or something else set in that universe at a different time. So it's probably not going to be, having the same characters at an older age or anything like that. So as a result, I'd like to see some kind of, happier ending. If I had to choose between the two, for sake of if they were to have a family, I would like to see, and this is just preference of what I would want to see, Daenerys be the one to survive on. Also because it would just close it for Jon. It'd be like Game of Thrones is more his story than it is anyone else. It's like his life, and in the end, he dies, but then his family survives on afterwards. So that's the way I would like to see it, and I think that would make a lot of sense, because he's a warrior too, right? What is he outside of being a warrior? All he knows to do really is battle and fight. That's what he is. And, him and Daenerys kind of getting together and having that, You know, I just personally would like to see if I had to choose between the two. But ideally, I'd like to see both of them survive. Sure, you can kill off lots of other characters here. We just saw Baelish be killed off, so that was a big one. Some of the others as well, you know, like you mentioned, Sansa, Jon, Sam. So you're thinking maybe Arya will be killed off. So, you know, as we get into the death predictions video, I'll go through it all. We'll list out all the names and see how this plays out and do some predictions for what we think. But that's kind of the way I see it. If I had to choose between the two, I'd like to see Daenerys live on with a family afterwards. But, you know, you guys can write your comments below. Let me know what you think on if they were going to kill off one of the two and it was going to be bittersweet in that way. You know, who would you want to see survive on afterwards? Would you want to see Jon be the last surviving and have Daenerys be killed? And maybe John Alexander is right, because Emilia Clarke did say that. So maybe Daenerys would be the one to be killed off if that is the way. But I would really like to see them both survive in the end of Game of Thrones. So write your comments below with regards to that question, guys, and who you think is going to survive out of the couple if one of them is, of course, to meet their end before the end of the series. Next one came in from Bonnie S., who says, now that Baelish is dead, what do you think will be the influence of that little kid in the Vale? He really acts like he's mentally ill. I would think it's bad to have him in charge of an army. He's no Lyanna Mormont, and that's a good comment from Bonnie. And a few people have mentioned in lots of comments I've seen already kind of discussing Robin and what's going to happen with him. So I would think that he personally will get pushed out of the show. He's so young. The series only has 6 episodes left. You know, even if they're going to be amazing 6 episodes, that's probably going to be something I personally think is going to get pushed off. I don't think that, you know, he does seem like a little serial killer, a little Ramsay in the making, but, you know, that's something that, you know, being in the Vale, it's always kind of been a section of Westeros or Game of Thrones that's by itself. It does come into the story with, you know, Baelish and Sansa helping Jon in the Battle of the Bastards and all that. But aside from that, it's been separate. I think if maybe Royce was the one to raise him, that he could turn out to be okay. He could turn out to be, you know, not too bad. But really, that story, I don't think we have time for. I really don't think so. I don't think we have time to see much of that. I would think maybe he'd just be like, you know, pushed into the background. Because there's just so many characters in Game of Thrones. They can't, you know, devote time to every single one when you only have 6 episodes left and you really want to wrap this up in a way that makes sense and fits in the universe for Game of Thrones. So you want to have some deaths and you want to have some characters survive on later and kind of be happy together. Next one was, is Tormund dead? So Tormund and Beric were on top of the wall when the Night King blasted it down. It seemed to me like they started running and shouting, so they were able to kind of get just out of the way of the parts that were falling. I think if they were going to be killed off, they would have shown it, because Tormund's a huge character, you know, and so is Beric. He's pretty big too. But I do think Tormund he represents the wildlings. So without him, the wildlings are like dead totally. So I think he's a character that might survive the series because, like you said, John said here earlier, to have someone who represents each section of the story, I think makes a lot of sense. And for him to be there as kind of your wildling survivor, makes a ton of sense that he'd be the one to do it. So I think he's alive. I think he's fine. I think he's probably gotten out of the way and gotten down. Where he'll go from there, we'll have to see. Maybe he can outrun them and try to get to Winterfell or something on horseback or something like that. We'll have to see how that all happens and how that all goes down. But that's what I'm kind of thinking, something like that. But I don't think he's dead. No. Same with Beric. I don't think either of them are really dead. Slippin' Jimmy says, Jon takes Jorah's sword, then he takes his girl. Dude's a savage. So that's true. However, he did it in a gentlemanly fashion. First, he asked Jorah if he wanted the sword back. Jorah said no. And he didn't really ask for Daenerys, but Jorah's been friend-zoned for years. He's been friend-zoned since like season 1 of the series as, you know, kind of like a, you know, older overseer type of protector, but not, you know, a possible husband, you know, material type of deal. So it's what it is. You know, he tries to block, but it's okay. This is what it is. Jon can't feel guilty about that, though. He's just doing his thing. Riot Respect says, Trev the Night King resurrects the dead, makes him into a massive army, throws a javelin pretty damn well, and rides dragons. He may actually win the entire show. So for that possibility of the White Walkers just winning the series and killing everyone, that would not. I don't think that would be a bittersweet ending. I think that would just be leave everyone bitter. It'd be like trolling the audience if the White Walkers just just kill everyone, decimate everybody. That would be, yeah, that would not... everybody would be pissed off. They'd feel like they wasted their time and that it wasn't a good ending for the series. So even though you're right, he's pretty formidable, that's for sure. Their one weakness I want to say, though, is if you take out the controllers, the whites that control all the dead, then they all, all the ones under their control, their magic, they just fall. So if you are to kill somehow the Night King, then the dragon, Viserion, and all of those under his control might just evaporate. So if Jon is able to, let's say, get into a sword battle or something, maybe Daenerys knocks the Night King off of the dragon, and then Jon is able to fight him, man to man. If Jon's able to kill him, probably all the others will just fold under him because he's the first. So he's kind of like the master controller at the back, and if you take him out, everybody under him falls. So I'd say that that's probably how they're going to beat him. But, of course, that's just kind of predictions at this time. Last one will be from Trev Rules, who says, to be honest, I did feel kind of bad for Littlefinger in that death scene. I did like the confirmation, though, that Littlefinger really is the ultimate big bad for Game of Thrones. He killed Jon Arryn in Season 1, and that's what brought Ned to King's Landing, where, of course, he was executed because of Littlefinger stabbing him in the back. And we know the rest of what came after with the War of the Five Kings. Littlefinger was the mastermind behind all of Game of Thrones' main events from Season 1 onwards. And that's a great observation. And that's very true that Baelish, if you look back to the very first season, he really is the one who stirs the pot and creates this chaos in order to climb that ladder, so to speak. So because Bran can see all this, he's... he's snitched on. He's done. People know they're wised up to what he does now, and so it's not going to work again. But he really is kind of the catalyst or the starting factor in a lot of what happens in Game of Thrones, and a lot of the craziness, destabilization, and then afterwards, trying to capitalize on it. So he's a great bad guy, man. I really like Baelish in the series. I'm kind of sad that he was killed off in this fashion, but we have so many, bad guys, like really, really strong bad guys. We had Ramsay, we still have Euron, we still have Cersei, we still have the Night King. So, when you mix all of that in there, Baelish became as formidable as he could, as powerful as he could in the time he had, but he was starting at such a low rank, with where he was at with his house and everything, that he did the best he could. But really, Cersei, power is power, right? Cersei outpowers him. The Night King, of course, outpowers him. So I think it makes sense that they killed him off at the end of this finale of this season, and that in the finale, of course, him not being one to survive. Could you really picture him surviving the series? He's done so many wrongs earlier on that it feels like we have to get vengeance for that, and it felt great in the finale that we did. Anyway, that'll be it for today's Q&A, guys. Send me more questions if you guys want to see some more. And if you like this one, don't forget, guys, thumb it up below. You can share, favorite, and if you're new and you want to subscribe to the channel, bottom left to subscribe. That's it for this video. I'll see you guys again soon tomorrow for another video. As always, it's Trev, and I'm saying peace. Later, guys. See you soon.